There's a mysterious respiratory infection spreading across the United States in our dogs that is puzzling veterinarians, endangering thousands of pets, but no one is talking about the critical danger to little dogs. Little 10-pound Chihuahua, Pekingese, Min Pin type terriers. No one's talking about the critical danger that can really, really long-term shorten their lifespan, but we're going to cover that and what you can do to prevent it and protect them today, right now. Countless parents are worrying about this infection. They're talking about it on YouTube. They're talking about it on Facebook. They're talking about it everywhere else. It starts out like classic kennel cough with a loud, harsh, dry cough with the patient's pretty much normal 1 second and coughing the second. And they look pretty good for a short period of time. That is long-lived. That is short-lived. So it progresses to a life-threatening situation. What can you do? We're going to talk about some prevention before we end. But one thing, if you haven't already, download my free cheat sheet on the killer kennel cough prevention and mistakes that you might make in prevention. It's in the link, in the first link below. Do it. Now, no one's talking about the critical danger of the little dogs. And what is that, you ask? Well, big dogs and little dogs are not just smaller. There's a significant difference in their respiratory tract anatomy. And we're going to try to demonstrate that here today. But if they survive the initial insult of pneumonia, which happens with this killer kennel cough situation, they're in the severe danger of tracheal collapse. My big dogs, my mini flock of Bernese mountain dogs sitting around here at my feet, running around my house with windpipes that are bigger probably than my own windpipe, are at minimal risk for tracheal collapse. We just never see tracheal collapse in big dogs, but as the breed gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and you get down to little 10-pound Chihuahua type things, their trachea can shrink, can start getting mobility and start wiggling, and if it collapses, the airway, the amount of air that goes through the airway goes down. They have breathing problems, and the danger is tracheal collapse, when it starts, is pretty much not reversible. It's pretty much not reversible. So why it happens and how it happens, the breeds that are at risk are your Chihuahuas, and anything that's 10 pounds. Doesn't have to be a purebred anything. If it's 10 pounds or less, its windpipe is small. We're going to see that in a second, and how the anatomy and physiology works together in basically a perfect storm, so that their breathing airway gets smaller and smaller and smaller in a big, big crisis. Once upon a time, there was a guy by the name of Bernoulli, and Bernoulli lost my prop. Bernoulli was a Swiss mathematician and physicist, and he basically showed that, look at this diagram that I have right over here. You have this tube that's pinched in the center, and when air goes through that tube, the pressure in the small area is lower than the pressure outside the small area. The pressure in the narrowed area is lower than the pressure in the widened area. Believe it or not, that's how an airplane gets off the ground, and you and I can get in the 747 and go from Los Angeles to New York. That's a different lecture, not my specialty. What happens in the airway of any dog is as the velocity of the air goes through, it increases. Go back to when we were kids in high school at the soda fountain. We would drink through straws and the like. If we had a big straw, this is a demonstration of an endotracheal tube that we use in anesthesia for dogs and cats all the time. This is a big size. If the big size for a big person or a big dog, I'm going to demonstrate it being a big dog right now. I'm going to breathe through this tube, kind of like a snorkel if you're out scuba diving. and I can breathe just fine, no problems. That's because the diameter is commensurate with the diameter of my own upper respiratory tract. What happens if I'm at the soda fountain and I get a straw that's smaller than my airway and I start breathing through it? Watch my respirations real quick. What you're going to see is that I have to breathe deeper and faster to get the same amount of air out of the same amount of air that goes through the big hole as the little hole. The same volume goes through because I need air. I could keep that up for a little while before I passed out, but I can't get enough oxygen out of that little hole that I could out of this hole to keep me going for a long period of time. Now, what does that mean? God made little dog windpipes perfect for little dogs, and he made big dog windpipes perfect for big dogs like me. The problem is, back to Bernoulli, if that diameter is 100% homogeneous and you have a little fragile windpipe and the diameter goes back and forth, the velocity goes back and forth because of what? Because of cough. That a cough increases the velocity that goes through that, and the little fragile windpipe is the velocity goes through that. The weakest area has what? We just proved, or Bernoulli proved, that the pressure is lower. And what happens when the pressure is lower? The thing collapses and sucks in. So you get that pinched area, just like you have in that in the diagram here on the right side of the screen. So as it pinches and gets down, it starts getting more and more mobile, and that mobility creates damage that is permanent. Collapsed trachea, mobile windpipes in these little dogs rarely get better. You can assuage their symptoms, you can make them feel better, but they're at risk for that being chronic for whatsoever. So if you take a 10-pound Chihuahua and he's 2.5 years old and he's supposed to live to 18 plus or minus, and you give him severe kennel cough and pneumonia, and he's coughing like this like crazy, and you got this new variant that they last not for 2 or 3 weeks, but for 2 or 3 months, and you got this, you're going to have a damaged trachea. The take home is these dogs have got to stop coughing as fast as you can make them. If we look at some radiographs of these little dogs, to the left is the front, to the right is the back. You can see with the arrows the highlight of the windpipe. The windpipe is this black area that's down the center of the thorax. And you can notice that it's dilated to the left of the arrows, and it's dilated to the right arrows, and it's pinched down in the center. We've got a little more magnification here, and you can see that pinching area. That's not going to go away, folks. That's just not going to go away. This little dog, no matter what, he's going to have a narrowed area like that for the rest of his life. And that rest of his life probably is going to be compromised, and his longevity is going to be decreased, and his quality of life and his quality of health is going to be decreased. And that needs to be prevented. And the best way to prevent it is getting on top of these infections as soon as possible, right away, no questions asked. So little dogs present as a big problem and as a big challenge for us as clinicians and for you as owners. Because if you've got a little dog, the problem is that in the outcomes we have with this killer kennel cough, the conditions in the average big dog are mild to chronic to poor. Poor outcomes are going to be much more common and much more complicated with these little kids, and we don't want that. So what can you do? Number one, pay attention to all aspects of your kid's health and make sure he's happy and healthy. Weight is a good big factor. Overweight, if this little 10-pound Chihuahua is way overweight, the risk of tracheal injuries is higher statistically. There's a lot of potential reasons for that, which we don't have to cover right now. But this little windpipe and this little dog If he starts breathing and coughing and that velocity goes through and the pressure goes down, his windpipe is going to end up getting compromised, and we don't want that. So prevention, yes, but at the first sign of coughing or problems, these kids need to get into your vet, get treated right away, and cough suppressants for sure. And even if you need prescription medication that's in the narcotic family that makes them a little bit sleepy, go for it, because you need to stop the cough. Cough begets cough, and coughing begetting coughing collapses trachea and shortens lives. What else you can do is to download my copy of the kennel cough cheat sheet that'll give you all the facts and information in one concise document. And keep your pet healthy, keep your pet worry-free, keep you worry-free, because if he's healthy, you'll be worry-free, and I can help keep your kid on the track. Thanks for joining me here today. Thanks for caring enough to care about your kid to get this information, because he'll thank you for being on top of his long-term health plan. Thanks.